I have this. So what I tried to do the other day, and I basically lost all the information about it. There's a very thorough video on YouTube on how to go about configuring the PlayStation emulator. And I want to share the configuration with you guys, my reaction to it. Let's see, this is a 24-minute video.
There's quite a bit to cover and discuss, so let's just get straight into it. So obviously you want to start Pcsx2 up, then you want to go into settings, and we're going to begin with interface. Now for the most part you are good on defaults here, but for obvious reasons you may want to start in full screen and hide your cursor when in full screen. Before we get into these settings, there's a couple of things that I need to mention. The first thing is, it's a good idea to check on your performance as you're changing these settings. Pcsx2 is quite resource hungry, especially when you're enhancing and upscaling. So you want to go over to OSD, which is on...
I mean, not over the board resource hungry, is reasonable resource hungry. I mean, you can render and scale games up by freaking 8K. Look at this. Ultra H definition. 8K Ultra. But I like to set this one. This is... You won't notice most of the difference if you don't have like high luminosity, like from the game's natural light. And if you have a lot of distance, like for you to give a chance to pixels to do weird stuff like at a distance. But if you use higher internal resolution, that the resolution of the screen you're at, you can actually give better information to the card, so it makes better decisions on what to display. And basically this works as some kind of anti-aliasing, which basically means having lines and edges less pixelated and more smooth and smoother.
On-screen display and showing the majority of these on. This lets you check everything as you're changing your settings to see if you're pushing things too far.
That's too much. I usually just do not resolution because I know that. CPU usage, barely care. Oh, we can do it. Pcsx version, I don't care. Indicators. What is indicators? States such as pausing, turbo, fast forward, and slow motion. Don't care. Internal graphical utilization. Frame times is good. And actually, let's go to a place in the game so you can more or less see what those are about. You have to be careful to press on game properties here because this is properties specific for the game. If you do graphics here, you're going to change you can see in the title here of the window, it says Pcsx2 settings. If I go with this one, it says Bully and the specific game settings. So you want to be clicking game properties. I go to graphics, and the OSD is this information that you see in the top right of your screen. You more or less can check what is it that it shows. This is useless. Statistics is too complicated. Frame times is that chart that you see over there is very useful to see like drops and peaks and everything. And like how constant the framing is. CPU usage is kind of like a lot of information, and I can see it if I can press the AMD software stuff, and I rather watch this one than the other one because I'm not used to it. And I don't know if the utilization that Pcsx2 shows me is the program's utilization of the overall thing. I know the AMD thing shows me the overall utilization. Like OBS is 21%, but if I go to Task Manager, my CPU is at 53%, so it's telling me about the utilization that the program is doing, for instance. So I can go hardware. I don't need to know that. I know what my graphic card says. Warn about unsafe settings. Oh yeah, that's the upper right. Does it have to be constant? Let me have it checked up to see if it disappears. In this case, I ignore this because in the game it's necessary for it to run. We'll see that later. Show FPS is good, the FPS counter. Because yeah, the chart of the frame timing by itself is kind of not the best, and if you see peaks and up and downs, you might think like, oh my god, this game sucks and it's terrible. But you can actually see here that the framing that we are having is having those spikes and kind of like a heart rate monitor thing, because it's very stable around 59 and 60 frames per second. So that's not an issue. And we know because we can verify with the value for the so this is the framing 59 60 59 60 59 60. Even though this doesn't look like a line, it doesn't matter because it is basically zooming in to the thing. And I have it free because my monitor is free, has FreeSync or whatever technology, variable refresh rate. So I don't need to VSync it. You can VSync it if your monitor is not that good, like my left side monitor, but it doesn't have a VRR. So GPU usage, that's a maybe. I don't know. Yeah, this is the usage it looks like from the program, which I don't really care about. Like, I need to know if I'm ruining my GPU really. So I'd rather have the AMD software tell me that, right? The value seems to be different. I see a 14 on the game and 30 on the GPU utilization for AMD software. So no, let's not show this. Speed percentages. I don't even know what those mean. It says 100%. Oh, this is for when you press commands to like make it faster, right? If I press this, it is 200. This is a shortcut for basically this function over here that says fast forward, it goes to 200, and slow motion goes to 50. You can use, in my case is, well, I thought it was semicolon for slow speed, but that's not it. Maybe shift. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, you can do that. And so no, we don't need to see that. It's very, on occasion, I kind of use it to skip cutscenes like in black that you're forced to watch. I used to do it a lot when I was just trying to set up the game to play, to skip those. But we don't need it. We don't need to see it. We can see it in the game. We can see that it is taking effect by seeing the game. And this thing doesn't disappear, so I'll take it off. The warning about unsafe settings. Or maybe it does disappear, but it doesn't because I'm here in the window. Because it should have disappeared. Yeah. Does it disappear by itself if I wait here? It does. So it has more to do with the update of the configuration. Show settings. No, that's useless information. I mean, for the complexity of it, not very useful. Inputs. Oh, this is like if you have a controller, but I guess if you have a keyboard too, the inputs can be registered. And this is part of a larger functionality that Pcsx2 has, that you can record like inputs. So let's say you're in a place in the game and you record some inputs and you want to replay that elsewhere or again to test something. You can record the inputs. It's not super precise, and the random aspects of the insides of the game ruin it for you most of the time. So you can't do like super precise stuff. Like I don't know. I think, you know, when they do, anybody that checked the benchmarking on GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2, that you have these scenes that the characters go through, but they go through the scenes in whatever, it goes with a customized suit or whatever clothes you have your character with. So it's actually like taking the game as it is and using a little bit of AI, I think, or a different thing that just the inputs to actually make your character go through where it is expected to go, because this is not super precise to do that. But that's something you can do and play around with. I might do it to test like different. I actually did it to test different configurations in a previous video. Maybe I get to do it this time here. I don't know. Maybe. Show speed percentages, show settings, show inputs, show input recording status. That's related to that feature of input recording. And video capture status. This has a recording thing you can record the games with and stuff. And maybe it's better than OBS because it's directly the output from the game. I don't know, but I haven't tested it. So those are all the options we have. And the one that I find the most useful are FPAs, frame times, and maybe they show GPU usage, but I just confirmed that it's not precise, so I'm not interested in it. I'm more interested about the general GPU stuff, and I can check it with this. There you go. So that's the OSD, on-screen display. So we can show it for a second here while we figure out what to do there. Let's go back to the video though.
Secondly, Pcsx2, for the most part at least, really does know best. A huge part of the Pcsx2 project is figuring out which of these settings is compatible for each individual game, which is no small feat considering the size of the library. And if you are using an incompatible setting, 9 times out of 10, the emulator will tell you in the top left-hand corner. And if there's a better setting you could be using, again, it should tell you in the top left. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can move on to renderer at the top here. And we've got 4 hardware renderers and 2 software.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there are games that I've seen the top left, like advisor stuff, tell you what thing works better for a specific name on a game, rather than general advice on this thing might break some games, which in the case of Bully, you basically have to ignore because without cycle rate, you fuck up the game. I guess I'll talk about it when he touches that.
Renderers. Null at the bottom is only used by debuggers, so if you're only playing games, pretend this one doesn't exist. Now software obviously isn't using hardware acceleration, and as a result, you can't use the majority of the enhancements with it. So this tends to be used as a backup if none of the hardware renderers work, which is pretty rare. Now with these 4 hardware renderers, some of these work better than others. So you should be prioritizing using Vulkan first because it performs the best. However, it is the least compatible. So if it doesn't work with a game, I'll then fall back onto OpenGL. And if that doesn't work, or if it's too performance heavy, I would then fall back onto one of the direct 3D drivers.
What's OpenGL? It's not software, right? But usually you don't have that, like, a lot of freedom to play with it, or at least the AMD, driver has more access to like direct 3D than that. Programming interface for rendering. The API is typically used to interact with a graphic processing unit to achieve hardware accelerated rendering. So it's like, yeah, it's an API. It's like an intermediary language to talk with a graphics card. So it's a different way of rendering shit. So it's the same as Direct 3D then. Graphics application programming interface for Microsoft Windows. Oh, this is specifically for Windows. Huh. But it's different. Who knows in what ways. But it's a low-level API. So it's an API for graphics. Yeah. Yeah, gotcha.
But you should be prioritizing Vulkan and OpenGL first because Direct 3D's blending capability isn't as good. You can, if you want, set this to...
What is blending anyway? I never had said in my life like, oh, this game is not well blended or blend. This game is not well blended. I've never said that. What I have said is this game is fucking performs like shit, like low frame rate. And so I'd rather... This is what I did the other day from the footage that I lost. There is a website someone created called Adrenalin Charts. Charts. This is the website. And you can basically select... This is not a folder. What is the folder? It's from AMD software, so I have to go to configuration. Maybe to performance settings. Yeah, this is the folder. So if I go here and then to that directory, I see this. These are... You know how you can do Control-Shift-O and show all this data about your GPU on the top right, sorry. You can register that in time, like on a X versus Y chart where X is time and Y is the value. And you can actually plot these values better. So the other day I was testing this, and I guess all these values that are similar come from the same test. And I was testing it with recording inputs, the feature we just talked about. So let's open some of these. What happens? Yep. And so this is funny because I remember the best performing one of these being this one. And this is, I think, OpenGL. I think it was OpenGL. And OpenGL somehow helped with something that was bothering me a lot. And you can just see it in this graph right here. Do you see how every test on everything drops somehow and deep into the 35 FPS for some reason? Well, I googled something about fully Pcsx2 frame drop, and this came out. I don't even know how many threads I visited. I think I ended up just googling without the game specifically, and I saw this. This is probably it. But whatever, I found that it was probably a bottleneck on the side of my storage, that the game was taking too long to like load new stuff, so it was dropping frames, not because of graphics, not because of CPU, not because of optimization of the Pcsx2 emulator, but because of my HDD, because it's a very old HDD. Actually, it's a $40 super old HDD that I got. It's just because it has 1 terabyte, but I got it from a laptop that I thought was fully garbage, honestly. And I put the emulator games in it because it's just emulator games, you know? And I thought I could run it from them, but it doesn't do a good job because the reading speed sucks. And working on that, I discovered this very interesting feature that this has on the emulation side of things, which is, I think is this one. Enable CD pre-caching. And what this does is load the disk image into RAM before starting the virtual machine, can reduce stutter in systems with hard drives that have long wait times, like the HDD that I have, but significantly increases boot times. So I did this and I loaded the game into the RAM, but I still didn't want to use my RAM. So what I did was move the fucking game to the SSD that is faster, like 10 times or 50 times faster. That has the operating system actually, and that solved the stuttering. I don't have any stutter anymore. So I can probably record inputs that are more consistent without these drops. And I can test actually for what renderer is better for the game. And you know what? I can actually test that right now. Okay, so this is the best the game can render. We figured it out, boys. Anyway, let's not get distracted from what we came to do. And what we came to do was watch this. I'll go get a glass of water because the wind, the fan is destroying my throat. Not a glass, a cup, highlight. Anyway, we discovered this. That's very good.
Automatic, but I recommend setting your preferred renderer. This makes it easier for troubleshooting just because you know for sure which one is being used. And for this video, I'm going to be using Vulkan. Adapter is your graphics hardware, and I recommend leaving nothing to chance and selecting your main GPU. The rest of these options are now in these nice convenient tabs, and we're going to start with display right at the top with full screen mode. And borderless full screen is definitely the one you should be using. However, if you are using one of the direct 3D drivers, you do have access to all of these different display modes if you need them. The use case for these is super specific, and if you're just using a normal display, you should most definitely be using borderless full screen.
Wait a second. Did I just see... This doesn't mean it's going to generate that refresh rate, is it? No, it's not the rendering. Let me check. So let's do 1080p like this. I mean, no, it's not generating frames. But if I do this, it might. Well, it is already. So if I go Ctrl-Shift-O, that's actually quite cool. Well, the game looks pristine. I wonder if it has anything to do with what I just did. I mean, it doesn't go above 120, but I do have the 160 hertz refresh rate. I don't even know what to think. I have a lot of aliasing now. Vulkan doesn't have that much aliasing, so only that might be worth it. And I can compare the footage actually of both of them I recorded. So everybody want to hit me, bro. And another funny thing is that whenever, if ever, the frames per second go above 60, the frame fluid thing from AMD also goes above 120. That's very good. Okay, so we're learning a lot of stuff. So I guess I'll leave it there. If I can pick direct 3D anyway, maybe I'll just up the resolution. No, because I'd rather have the performance than... I actually don't know. Let me see. Let me see Vulkan. Let me see if my theory is true. I should be able to see it in the places that I just went through. Oh no, it's not that much better. Look at the stairs over there. They have aliasing. But the floor doesn't have a lot of aliasing. No, Vulkan is very good at reducing aliasing, I'm noticing. And it is frame generating? I'm confused. I'm confused because the AMD software doesn't say that. It says disabled VSync and DirectX 11 or 12. But it works with Vulkan. It is generating frames. I might be able to keep Vulkan then. Wow, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, if I do this with any of the directs, yeah, it's immediately noticeable. Yup, I can see. Yeah, no, yeah, it's crazy. The aliasing problem in Direct 3D is crazy. So is that the blending problem that it talks about? So I'll leave Vulkan then. What's the difference between Vulkan and that? I need to check. You see Vulkan and what is the best one? 12. Well, it's not so different, and I have Vulkan is inflated over here. Well, not too much. It's just 60. It's just that the variation is so low that just one frame. Look at how high a frame brings you. Like this is 59, like around here, and this is 61. This is crazy. But I should be able to keep Vulkan just because of the aliasing benefits, anti-aliasing benefits. Yeah, this is Vulkan. So Vulkan gets slightly worse performance, but negligibly worse performance. And I'm like super overdoing this part of the video, of the stream, but I don't care. It's my stream, nobody's watching. And it might be just worth it. So is it true Vulkan has better anti-aliasing? Whatever is written. I don't even know. There's nothing specifically. So Vulkan aliasing. Yeah, it goes too complex. Whatever. But I do notice better performance. Better looks. So cool, Vulkan. And I also mentioned like better colors. I don't know if that's true, but whatever. Let's continue.
Full screen.
Too long a
so moving
segment.
on to aspect ratios, and fit to window / full screen is essentially stretch to fit. So it will take a 4x3 or a 3x2 image and stretch it to fill the entire screen. I'm not the biggest fan of doing it that way, but it's there if you want to use it. Auto standard 4x3
Oh, but I can't pick those resolutions with Vulkan. That's funny.
for interlaced.
But I'd rather not have aliasing at all, to be honest.
And 3x2 for progressive is how things are supposed to look if you're not using widescreen. Standard 4x3 is used if you want to force 4x3 onto 3x2 progressive scan games, for whatever reason. And widescreen 16:9 you only ever need to set for games that have native anamorphic widescreen options. Just make sure that you turn those on in the actual in-game options. Do keep in mind that this is anamorphic widescreen, which means that it's taking the adjusted 16:9 image, squishing that into 4x3, and then stretching it into 16:9. So we are getting stretched pixels on the x-axis, but that's just the sacrifice we make for widescreen. Now I can't talk about widescreen without then talking about the enable widescreen patches option towards the bottom here. This option is essentially hacking anamorphic widescreen to games that were made without widescreen in mind.
I don't have it anymore.
And for me personally, PS2 widescreen hacks work really, really well. And the best thing about this option is that it automatically applies 16:9.
I guess this is kind of confusing because the game doesn't have any like response to it. Like even if I turn the cheat on or the patch off, it's like the game is not doing anything. And it's paused in game, not paused in the software, and it doesn't have any effect on it, does it? Let me see if I don't see anything change. So I don't even bother about this. The game doesn't have any effect in the game.
So when you enable it, you know that the correct aspect ratio is always going to be applied. Now, because not every single game has a widescreen patch, if one isn't detected when this option is active, it will fall back and use whatever you've set for your default aspect ratio here. To simplify the whole widescreen thing, I'm going to show you how to set things up so you can play as many games in widescreen as possible. So you want to leave enable widescreen patches on by default. And don't forget, this will also set 16:9 for us. So for the most
Yeah, what I like about this video is that even though I'm reviewing it to configure Bully, what he does is give you a set of advice that would work with any game, or at least for a good layout for the rest of the games to fit into, with a little bit of a tweaking and investigation and whatever. So it's very good. That's why I like this
simply
video.
Activating this option will take care of most of your widescreen needs. But there are some native widescreen games out there that don't actually have a widescreen patch. And for those, you will need to set widescreen up on a per game basis. So in the description below, I'm going to put a link to every single widescreen PlayStation 2 game. So if your game doesn't have a widescreen patch, you can check to see if it's on this list here. And if it is, you can just turn the widescreen options on in the in-game settings and make sure that you set 16:9 up in the emulator on a per game basis, which I'll show you how to do towards the end of the video. Moving down to FMV aspect ratio, and this comes in handy when we're using widescreen. Some widescreen games will also adjust their FMV sequences for proper 16:9. Other games will simply stretch their 4x3 FMV sequence into 16:9. And if that bugs the crap out of you like it does me, we can force those into 4x3 by setting auto standard or just standard 4x3. De-interlacing is probably the most important aspect when it comes to making PS2 games.
Does that have any effect on it? Well, he said standard or this one. I saw something strange on his bald head for a second. Sorry for saying bald like that.
Look good on modern digital displays. This is the option that everybody tends to get confused about, so I'm going to break it down as best I can and show you the easiest way to remove the interlacing for every game. So the vast majority of the PS2 library uses an interlaced presentation, which broke the image up into two separate fields of lines and alternated between the two to present its image.
Oh, so
this
the
method
interlacing is taking that off. That's the D.
So when this is being displayed on a digital display, it really doesn't know what to do with it. As a result, some extreme measures do need to be taken to merge those alternating lines to present a sharper image. And there's 3 different ways we can do this. The first and best way to remove the interlacing is to see if your game has a native progressive scan mode. Some games were made with progressive scan in mind, but these are few and far between. So to make that easier, I'm going to put a link in the description below that will take you to a list of every single progressive scan game. So if your game is on this list, all you need to do is turn progressive scan on in the actual in-game options. And because Pcsx...
Let's see, fully progressive scan, bully, just what? 69, yeah, fuck does that mean? Ah, okay. So one game like this would have all of these available, and Bully only has this 69. That's probably why it doesn't have any effect unless you squish it, and it looks squished. But I don't see this PlayStation 2 with alternative display modes. Bully. It says yes to 16 by 9, and then it says no for everything else. But I don't know what that is. Not what he's talking about. Wait 15 seconds and the minute will return. We'd like to continue.
Pcsx2 is awesome. As soon as it detects a progressive scan image, it will automatically disable any deinterlacing options that you might have on because they're simply not needed. Which means that all you need to do is turn progressive scan on in the in-game options, and you don't need to touch any other deinterlacing options.
So Pcsx2 takes care of that. I remember there was a F5 key here, which I can turn that on, right? But none of them, I don't see any effect. Oh, I don't see any effect of this. So the interlacing off, basically.
Because not all games have a progressive mode, the second way we can remove the interlacing is by enabling the no interlacing patches. This is essentially hacking deinterlacing into games that don't have a progressive scan mode. But just like the widescreen patches, the no interlacing patches can also apply to games that have native progressive scan modes. And all the patch does is turn those in-game options on for you. The third way we can remove it is by using this deinterlacing option here. And if we click on this drop-down list, we've got a bunch of different algorithms
That's what I
we can
just
choose
circled
from
through.
to help merge those interlacing
But no single one has any effect on the game, so we're taking it off.
lines. No interlacing is just a way to turn it off. But I very much recommend that you leave this on automatic. And that's because Pcsx2, 9 times out of 10, is going to know which one is best for your specific game. For those 1 in 10 times where the emulator doesn't know best, you can select one of these to see if it works any better. Now, I'm not going to show you these because the whole idea is that you're not meant to see them. And there really isn't a best option, it's just which one is working best with your game. Now, don't be intimidated by this list. Whilst you're playing a game, if you press F5, you can cycle through them, making it really easy to figure out which one looks best. So I'm just going to simplify the whole deinterlacing thing and show you my preferred method on how to use it. So you want to leave the no interlacing patches on by default. And we're going to let this either hack deinterlacing, or for the native progressive scan games, simply turn all of those in-game options permanently on. And if no patch is found, it will fall back.
This might... I didn't think of this, but this might appear in the general configuration window. Yeah, apply widescreen patches and apply no interlacing patches. I hadn't realized that. Obviously, he's thinking about the most general thing, right? And I know Vulkan is the best option for this most of the time.
Back onto this deinterlacing option, which we've set as automatic. This will give you the best chance at removing the deinterlacing in the best way possible, without having to mess around with your settings. And for those very rare occasions where a game doesn't have a patch and the automatic deinterlacing option doesn't work, you can then cycle your way through these to find the best one. Now, disable interlacer offset is more of a fine-tune adjustment and should really only be used if you're forced into using one of these algorithms for deinterlacing. And this can help further reduce blurriness in some situations. So if you found a game where pretty much none of these are really doing the job and completely removing the interlacing, you can activate this and it may help things. But it is 50-50 if it's going to work or not.
Let me see. I can look it up close and see what it does. Totally no effect whatsoever. Whatever, let's leave it off.
Now that we've got deinterlacing finally done and out of the way, everything else is far more straightforward. So with bilinear filtering, this is the same as applying a smooth or a sharp filter across the entire screen. You generally don't want to choose none, because choosing one of these also organises the spaces between pixels. Moving down to vertical stretch. And
I didn't know that. I never pay attention when he says it. Let me see. While I have it sharp. Smooth, it doesn't seem to have any effect on it either. Ooh, none looks sharper. Yeah, so it actually looks super sharp. You can see it in the 3 far away. Super. The fuck. I don't know if none looks better, bruh. There's certainly a difference. Let's play with it and none. It actually has some sort of like... It makes the game look old. Well, actually, I know I have turned on... Why is that guy so angry, Barry? Ooh, look at the bricks in that building. If I go no, it looks like the game has aliasing problems a bit. But on smooth, it doesn't. Yeah, I'll leave it on smooth. Or if I render... Yo, I should also make tests for the internal resolution and see how much frames do I lose by going like 8K. This is 6K. Clearly can't run it. Can't run 1440p, can run 1800. 2160, which is 4K. And it works as such as great anti-aliasing. because how much is my usage? Oh, 95. Yeah, the computer doesn't like this resolution, huh? So 4K might be too much. T100 is like the sweet spot though, or not really? Whoa, the game looks good in this resolution, bruh. See weird stuff on the thing though. Well, this doesn't do anything against the fuck that I'm seeing. It's kind of funny making this a game this old, take an RX 6600 and have it 99% utilization. I think 1340 is okay. It can't run this. Yeah, I needed to chill because I am also doing other things like the stream. So 1440 is probably good enough. 70-80% use. I can even reduce it more and I'll probably be able to play YouTube videos. I might be able to do that. 2060, 68. Yeah, this is more reasonable.
This one can go in both directions. It can both squash and it can stretch. And this can come in handy for users that are outputting to a weird display and you need to sort out your proportions. It can also come in handy for widescreen games that can sometimes squash or stretch themselves a little bit when in widescreen mode. Cropping.
Well, the game doesn't have that. The game, Jimmy looks chubby to the sides still, doesn't he? He looks like a regular kid. He doesn't look stretched up. Neither does he in full screen, right? He looks fine. Yeah, Jimmy looks fine. You know what? I'll turn off the frame generation because it's kind of too much for the card right now. It slows me down a little bit and it's annoying.
It comes in handy for games that still show a little bit of their overscan area, despite show overscan being turned off. And these will often appear as garbage lines of pixels around the edge of the screen. And you can remove lines of pixels from any edge that you want with this function.
Oh, the way the game was previously... Oh no, I actually have them on. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Display, yeah. I have one pixel on every direction. Yeah. You can see the garbage in here. Like the corner is not fully made. Well, let's see if we take that off. Is that too big of a deal? No, I can see like the bottom. The bottom definitely has some of that. And I can see it in some cutscenes. That's why I don't like it. I don't like it. I can't see it in a game per se. And actually the corners give a little bit of a nice feel to it. But I remember seeing it in cutscenes and I was annoyed by it, so I actually have to go to the dorms and go to sleep. Let's do that then. Where are the dorms at? This way. I tried to go up and he came down anyway. Yeah, I can see them. Look at that. You can see them. I don't know if you saw them. I see them. Look at that. To your left. That's where we're trying to get rid of. So I had gotten rid of it by doing one pixel on each direction. And I should actually maybe just drop left and top, because bottom and right don't show that. So they should be fine. That's to not lose one line of pixels unnecessarily. Yeah, that's fine. But again, let's go to the next setting.
You want to do on a per game basis, because if you do need to crop, it's rarely going to be the same for every game. Now we've already covered the widescreen and the interlacing patches, so we can move on to anti-blur. Activating this does remove the blurring effect that was often used in the development of PlayStation 2 games. And this blurring effect was definitely only intended for CRTs. So even though when this is active it's less accurate to PS2 rendering, it does make it look a lot better for digital displays, which is why it's on by default out of the box. VSync, we all know what that does. Activate it if you don't want any screen tearing. And we've already gone over disable.
Oh, so is the VSync option in game properties like graphics? No, he's still back in emulation now, so he's dealing with a different version of the game, of the emulator.
Interlace offset. Now screen offsets, I do need to go a bit more in depth with this one because it's quite hard to identify when you need to enable it, and you definitely want to leave it off by default. So when this is disabled, Pcsx2 is emulating a fixed screen position. However, some games use screen position offsets to move the screen for certain effects, like Wipeout Fusion's screen shake. So if screen offsets is off for a game that needs it on, certain screen effects may not appear as they should. But doing that for certain games can have a way more detrimental.
What if I Google it, bully? Do I have to go Pcsx2? I guess it don't. And I've never seen one of those effects in... Oh, so I have to turn it off, right? What is that anyway? No, that's too much to deal with. No offsets. It's fine.
and more difficult to identify effects. Now, the most egregious example I can find of this is definitely Gran Turismo 4. When in 1080i mode and you're steering left and right, you get this weird blurring effect, but it only happens in third person mode. It doesn't happen at all when you're in first person. So something weird is going on. But after looking at the screen on the right hand side, I noticed that the entire goddamn image was moving a few pixels to the right. So the light bulb went off. This game is using screen offsets. But this game only uses screen offsets for these particular effects when in 1080i mode, which isn't confusing at all. So not all screen offset issues are going to present themselves in the same way. And if screen offsets is messing with something, how it's messing with it depends on the implementation of that particular screen effect. And for the most part, you're probably not even going to notice even if a game has an issue with screen offsets. But every now and then, you are going to come across a game like Gran Turismo 4 where you're just like, what the hell? So for those types of games that are seemingly blurring for no particular reason, you can try turning screen offsets on a per game basis. Show overscan obviously shows the overscan area, which you're not actually meant to see. Now that we've got the display tab all done and out of the way with, we can move on to
game overscan area. What is that? When? Well, I don't even know what the hell that is. But it says turn it off.
Rendering. And with your internal resolution, obviously, the higher you set this, the better the graphics are going to look. Not only does it increase the resolution of all of the assets, it also gets rid of the jaggies to a certain extent without the need for anti-aliasing.
Oh, it increases the resolution of all the assets, so the textures are increased in resolution when you increase that. It makes sense. Instead of just having, a stretched out thing where the pixels are the same, you create more pixels.
So I'm going to cycle through the most used resolutions so you can take a look for yourself. Mip mapping is way too complicated to explain for this video, and it would just take way too long. And it's not really a visual enhancement option, it's more of an accuracy option. So the higher you set it, the more accurate it's going to be, but the more resources it's going to eat up. But I definitely recommend leaving this on automatic, as some games need one of these to be set specifically.
Where's the mip mapping option on this? Mip mapping. I was using rendering, graphics rendering, mip mapping.
So leave it on automatic and let Pcsx2 do its thing. Moving on to texture filtering, and you're probably looking at
the option doesn't even look like that anymore. It's just a checkbox.
At this thinking, haven't we already?
Let's leave it checked.
Moving on to texture filtering, and you're probably looking at this thinking, haven't we already covered bilinear filtering? And the answer is yes, but in post-processing. So this bilinear filtering option in the display tab applies itself to the entire image after everything's gone through the renderer. Now, these two filtering options control the texture filtering as it's going through the renderer.
Gotcha. So there's textures as images, and there's the final image that is our perspective of those textures. And so the rendering configuration is for those first textures, and the display configuration is for our final view of those textures. Okay, so do I have the same setting? No, it's not bilinear, smooth, or bilinear, whatever.
And the kind of filtering we're talking about is the filtering that was applied by the developers of the actual game. The majority of PS2 games uses bilinear filtering, but there are some games out there that use trilinear filtering instead. And both of these were used to help smooth out sharp pixel edges on low resolution textures. Filtering isn't applied to every asset in the game, it's used more on a where it's needed kind of basis. And between these two settings, we can either turn it on or off for both bilinear and trilinear games, but we can also force bilinear filtering onto trilinear filtered games, and vice versa. The only reason you would ever change any of this is if you're really picky with your presentation. And I recommend that you leave this on bilinear PS2 and default automatic, because if you have anything else set, you can break the rendering in various ways.
Oh shit. Well, I don't want to break anything, but I guess I can try it out because I know if anything goes wrong, more or less I'll have an idea of what it is. Let me see. Maybe I have to check this guy up close. You can see the textures there. Anyway, rendering. Oh, look at nearest. Nearest is basically no effort in working on textures. It looks sharper though, but up close it looks like this. It's basically pixels. So no, you don't want to have that. Straight up pixels, huh? It's not that it's broken, the rendering. It's rendering as it's supposed to. So bilinear as in PS2. Notice any difference? I don't see anything. So let's leave it as it is. Maybe it doesn't have effect in this game, but other games can have an effect, and it can have an effect on. Okay.
But this is an in-depth guide, so I've still got to show you all of these settings just in case you're the picky type. So this texture filtering option here contains all of the bilinear options. And when this is set to bilinear PS2, it means that bilinear filtering is only being applied to bilinear PS2 games. When bilinear forced is set, it means that bilinear filtering is being forced to every single game, including the trilinear games. Setting nearest is the equivalent of turning bilinear filtering off, because it doesn't use any smoothing effects. Now this trilinear filtering option contains pretty much the same options as the bilinear stuff, but of course it only applies to the trilinear filtered games. And you should definitely be leaving this on automatic and let Pcsx2 do its thing. Anisotropic filtering is essentially anti-aliasing and it helps get rid of the jaggies, especially at extreme viewing angles. And we've got up to 16x available. Obviously, the higher you set this, the more jaggies are going to be reduced, but the more performance it's going to eat up. So set this with your performance expectations. Dithering on PlayStation.
Actually, the anisotropic filtering doesn't have any effects. Not only I don't see any effect visually, but I also don't see any effect like in performance. I mean, it says, oh, it doesn't say what it does. Reduce texture anti-aliasing extreme viewing angles. All this anisotropic filtering. Let me see. Make distant objects in games look sharper. All distant objects. So I have to come out to see it. Oh. 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 Well, I already have it in the maximum setting, so I don't know if I should waste time doing it, but I'll go. Anisotropic filtering. Off. Oh. Oh, that makes aliasing. Yeah, I can see it looks better. Look at this. Like the whole thing. Look at this. You can more or less see it in the video. Yeah. But if I go like this, it's like that the sidewalk is super smooth. Yeah, so let's leave the anisotropic filtering on. It's actually, I remember spending a lot of time fixing that on GTA 5, and now I act like I don't care. I do care. And so leave this as much as possible.
PlayStation 2 is nowhere near as much of an issue as it was on PlayStation 1. And if a game does have a dithering pattern, you'll be hard pressed to actually see it. But there are some extreme cases where you may want to scale the dithering or turn it off entirely.
What's dithering? Oh, I remember this. This is like random values to avoid weird patterns in randomness. It says intentionally applied from form of noise used to randomize quantization error, preventing large-scale patterns such as color banding in images. Color banding. Color banding is a subtle form of posterization in digital images, caused by the color of each pixel being rounded to the nearest of the digital color levels. Color banding is an undesired artifact. Okay, so you see how the sky here is like some sort of rainbow with like strands of things? I get it. So I think we should be able to see this if I look at the sun in the game. I mean at the sky. I do see some artifacts. I don't see anything. Well, let's force 32-bit and whatever.
And again, we're using Gran Turismo 4 as an example in its 1080i mode. For some reason, when this game is in its 1080i mode, it applies loads of dithering to all of the gradients, and this is most noticeable with the gradients in the sky. For me personally, I like to turn the dithering off and remove that dithering pattern entirely. Now, blending accuracy obviously controls the blending accuracy of the frames of animation, and for the most part, you are going to be good on basic recommended. And if a particular game does look better with a higher setting, Pcsx2 will tell you which one in the top left-hand corner. The emulator is pretty obsessive about this setting, so you can pretty much guarantee that it's always going to suggest the best one. However, if you are on high-end hardware and performance isn't really an issue for you, you can go ahead and set this to full or maximum to save having to faff around with those settings.
What is it? Bro, I'm zoning out. Damn. That's the consequences of a 9-hour
blending
shift.
Accuracy obviously controls the blending accuracy of the frames of animation. And for the most part,
blending accuracy of the frames of animation.
You are going to be good on basic recommended. And if a particular game does look better with a higher setting, Pcsx2 will tell you which one in the top left-hand corner.
Recommended blending accuracy for this game is full. You can adjust the blending level in game properties to improve graphic quality. This will increase system requirements though.
The emulator is pretty obsessive about this setting, so you can pretty much guarantee that it's always going to suggest the best one.
So what does it tell me if I change it from maximum to minimum? Blending accuracy is below basic. This might break effects in some games, so more than basic. And that's it. This is what I wanted to test though. I don't see anything.
1. However, if you are on high-end hardware and performance isn't really an issue for you, you can go ahead and set this to full or maximum to save
not
having
that
to faff
much
around with
high
those settings. Texture preloading is a
sometimes that makes games like perform super bad, but it's not due to your computer in particular. It's optimization, I guess, because I don't have any problem making it maximum on Bullet. In fact, I had it in maximum for all the benchmarks we took earlier, so there's no problem with it.
Performance option, and you definitely want this on full. Now, spin GPU and spin CPU during readbacks are again performance options, and you should really only use these if you're playing a game for a really long time and you don't want your CPU or your GPU to go into a power save mode. Now that we're all done with the rendering tab, we can move on to the post-processing tab.
However, I think that if I go to usage, no, it's not using the things, but I guess it does if I am like here. Oh, it isn't. Okay, whatever. I'll turn this off. I never had problems turning that on, or I'm turning that off.
Everything in here is really the icing on the cake. And we're going to start with the contrast adaptive sharpening. Now, this is the Fidelity FX contrast adaptive sharpening that's made by AMD. However, it works with both AMD and NVIDIA cards, which is awesome. So basically, it's one of those newfangled adaptive algorithms that's meant to help increase your FPS in normal PC games, whilst retaining your visual fidelity. But its inclusion with Pcsx2 isn't necessarily for performance reasons. It's mainly used as an additional way to help sharpen up your games. So you've got two different options to choose from. You can sharpen only for the internal resolution, or you can
Let's sharpen the shit out of this. Let's see how it looks when I sharpen it. Oh, it is sharpened. Ooh. Ooh. Bro, the difference is crazy. The game looks basically blurry without it. Wow. Recommended value is none, but it does work. Like if you look far away into these characters, none, it's blurry, even the wall in the back. But if I do this, it looks way brighter. Not brighter, but more defined. Oh, but this is just sharpness. What the fuck? Huh. Still has an effect even over 0%. I'll do 50. I want it sharp, but not like excessively sharp. Oh, look at this. Maybe we can have a better chance at checking the dithering. No, I don't see anything.
Sharpen and resize for your display resolution, which is probably the one you should be using. And you can also change how much sharpness is being applied on the right hand side here. But for the most part, I keep it off by default and only turn it on for the games that absolutely need it. Now, FXAA is anti-aliasing, not to be confused with anisotropic filtering, which is really only meant for extreme viewing angles. This function is more of a general purpose anti-aliasing, and for me, it goes on and it stays on. And last but not least, we have filters/shaders. Now, there's a million different shaders out there for a bunch of different reasons, but their main application is for CRT effects. So they're really used by people that like to keep more of an authentic original look. For me, because I like to upscale and enhance everything, I want the cleanest possible image. And as a result, shaders and filters, with this emulator at least, are not for me. But if you're into that authentic original look, scan lines and downsampling and all of that other
You have to
stuff,
really
you
look.
can go ahead and use these.
Yo, I'll leave a comment telling him to look at. How long ago did he publish this? 3 months ago. It's actually this year. Look. I won't say anything. I'll just show it to you guys. Look at the way it looks here. Look at the way it looks here. Oh, it looks sharper. What? Bro, you were supposed to look worse. Yeah, but if I do none, scanline filter, diagonal filter, these are all like on top that look horrible. But if I do this, or if I do this, actually, what the hell? Is that anti-aliasing? It's like a sort of smoothing effect. I don't know if it is because of the time of the day. No, I fucked it up. Okay, this works. He's actually right. This looks sharper. This one is just like, well, whatever. Let's go with none. Maybe I can even have a better effect out of these resolutions. You can actually see the sharpness of increasing resolution better if you take out this post-processing. But it kind of smooths out the distance a little bit, so I don't know what to do. Do I want super sharp like this, or do I want... And I'm pretty sure that turning this off will bring a little bit of aliasing. Yeah, it does. I can see it in the floor there. And it's flickering and shit. No. Nah. Look at this. This is not... It flickers for a little bit and super far away. Yeah, this is the best. So good.
These. I'm going to cycle through a couple so you know what's here, but ultimately you can just download your own and use those for any reason whatsoever. Now, Shade Boost,
why is it so slow?
I don't really actually consider it to be a filter. It allows you to independently change the brightness, contrast, and the saturation of the image. I generally don't tend to use this, but I know that it's there if I really need it. Now that we've covered pretty much every single visual option, I do just want to...
Let me check something out. Is this why the YouTube videos are slow?
Quickly give some advice on how you have your defaults.
No.
Now, you can obviously set these to however you'd like, but you may need to factor in performance. Now, some people like to have all of this at default settings with all of the enhancements turned off and then incrementally turn it all on for every game that they play. Other people, such as myself, like to turn the majority of the enhancements on and then dial it back if I need to.
Yeah, there are some enhancements you're definitely going to have in every game. Like, who wants to play a game having a 1080p monitor and anything less than that, right? At least in terms of the rendering resolution.
The way I have my default setup is the best way to get all of these enhancements automatically applied. It is the laziest way, but in my opinion, it's also the best way. So if you want to copy my settings, I'm just going to go through my tabs now. The only one that you may want to change is the blending accuracy. I leave this on full because I can't be bothered to change it all the time, and I've got the hardware to do it, but you may need to set it on basic if you're on lower end hardware.
That's true. Oh, and that's what he meant. Yeah. From the first time I watched the video, I think he meant like whatever games you were playing, but in general, yeah, because some games will beat up on your GPU like crazy. Or if that's your
Changing
CPU,
all
then
your settings per game is easiest from a maximized window. So go back up to interface and make sure that double click toggles full screen is active. Then all you want to do is actually start your game. Once it's started up, double click to go to windowed mode, and then you can maximize this window. Once you've found a good spot in game, you want to go up to settings and go to game properties. And any changes that we make here will only be saved and applied for this game only. So if you go down to the graphics tab on the left hand side, you can see that it contains all of those same settings. So from here, you can change any of these settings to your heart's content and it will be updated immediately. So let's go over to rendering. Let's change the internal resolution down to 1x. You can see it's updated straight away. And that will happen for all of these settings. So I fully recommend that you play around with these settings to figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah, and playing with the settings takes
and keep an eye on your performance as you're doing it. And obviously, you can use all of this for troubleshooting or just for testing. Also, from this game properties window, you can check to see if your game has any patches. Just click on the patches tab on the left-hand side. Now, if you've got widescreen and no interlacing patches on, in your defaults, you shouldn't need to turn these on. But on occasion, they don't catch them. So it's good practice to turn these on in addition if you really want them on. Now, this game also has a disable blur patch, but if you remember, we're using the internal disable blur hack instead. But when we enable this, it should override it. Depending on the game that you're playing, you may have a bunch of different patches that you can choose from. From simple
and you can even download more that you find on the internet.
Fixes to
that's what I did on GTA San Andreas. I installed some that I found on the old forum for the emulator.
The full 60 FPS hacks. So it's a good idea to always check these just to see what you can do with your particular game. Now, once you finish playing around with your settings, you can close this window and just double click to go back to full screen mode. Now, you can change your settings from the actual pause menu and then go to game properties. But unfortunately, this doesn't contain every single option. So that's why I prefer to do it from a maximized window. So doing it this way instead doesn't just give you access to every single option, it also allows you to see all your changes take place in real time without having a menu bash. But if I quickly just need to change one setting, I will use the pause menu. Now, before I close out the video, I do want to re-emphasize how much effort goes into by the team to figure out which of these settings works for each individual game, considering the library is over 4,000 games large. And for the most part, it's impossible to break stuff these days. You can only enhance and make it look better. All of those advanced settings that you shouldn't be touching are now completely taken care of. These days, Pcsx2 is pretty much pick up and play. There we go, that was my breakdown of pretty much every single graphical option for Pcsx2. Now, I didn't forget about texture replacements. I'm just going to be covering those in a separate video. And if you have a suggestion for which emulator I should be covering next,
okay,
put that in the comments below. And if you like today's video, slam me a like. And if you want to keep up to date, you know what to do. And apart from that, go play some games. Adios.
So yeah, we're finished, finally, with this. I remember I had made like a, let me see, I had written on a note what was worth testing. Yeah, so the renders, the anti-aliasing levels, but that's not aliasing, it's anisotropic filtering levels. And then there's this cycle rate options. But I mean, if we go to the game, this is a good enough state. And yeah, I wanted to show how if I do game properties, go to graphics sheets, what was it, emulation, and if I do 100% normal speed, the frames drop to 45, although it does play at 45. Look at that, 35, 33, 30. It does play at this speed, but it, you know, it's not like optimal. It doesn't look good. But if I do cycle rate 130, I get a little bit above 45 at least at all times, almost 60. Then 180 overclock, almost constantly at 60 frames per second, but it still drops to 53. So if I know it is not going to drop below that with 300, I leave it at 300. And that's pretty much what I do. You drop there because I went to full screen, but this is the game as a consistent experience. Impedance. Anyway, I guess it's time to play the game.